Rebooting the American Dream explains exactly what we need to do. Bringing our jobs and manufacturing home, rolling back the Reagan tax cuts, ending corporate personhood, and educating our electorate are part of the simple 11-step plan in rebooting the American Dream that we can start today to rebuild our country. Check out Rebooting the American Dream in bookstores everywhere and online at TomHartman.com. We can recover the American Dream we lost 30 years ago to Reaganomics and the Reagan-Bush-Clinton-Bush era. We're all in this together. Please check out Rebooting the American Dream by yours truly, Thom Hartmann, in bookstores everywhere and online at TomHartman.com.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Welcome back, Hector in Chicago. Hey, Hector, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Tom. Can you hear me okay?
Just fine. What's up?
You're on speaker. So the cure to everything, I think, is intelligence about, not intelligence, just regular, everyday intelligence. What you talked about, I learned from, about our politicians being rigged since 1978. You know, for all of them to be able to legally, is just goes to show the Supreme Court was also bribed, because they're the ones who legalized it.
Yep.
And they were for slavery. I mean, the Civil War, something about they started that, and just so much corruption happened because of that. And I find the cure to be taking care of the Supreme Court. I mean, if we get rid of all the corrupt politicians, everything would be fine. Yeah. But for some reason, the American people don't care enough, because the only way to deal with such devilry, treachery, or devilry, is to get rid of them. And it's been done everywhere in the world, but for some reason, Americans won't do it. We just sit back and watch TV and.
Well, we're letting our government, run. I don't know how you get rid of Supreme Court justices. I do believe that Biden should expand the Supreme Court, but he doesn't have the ability to do that right now. If he gets a large enough majority in the House and Senate after this election this fall, and he's still president next year, then I hope that becomes, right up to the top of his agenda, because you're absolutely right, Hector. This so much of this stuff. I mean, it was the Supreme Court with the Heller decision that flooded our country with guns. It was the Supreme Court with the Buckley and Bilotti.
I'm Amy Goodman. Russia's state media is reporting imprisoned opposition leader Alexei Navalny has died at the age of 47. Prison authorities said in a statement earlier today Navalny felt ill after going on a walk and lost consciousness. They say medical staff was unable to resuscitate him. The cause of death has not yet been determined. Navalny's spokesperson, Kiri Yarmish, said on social media their team has not received confirmation of his death and that Navalny's lawyer was traveling to the penal colony located in the town of Harp in the Arctic Circle, where Navalny is serving a 19-year sentence on charges of extremism over his criticism of Russian President Vladimir Putin. The prison, nicknamed Polar Wolf, is among the harshest in Russia, due in part to the severe winter. Navalny has been imprisoned since 2021 when he returned to Moscow after an assassination attempt with the nerve agent Novichok in 2020. Navalny has been hailed as an anti-corruption crusader who is willing to stand up to Putin and has also been condemned for his past ultranationalist comments. In Gaza, Israel's attack on Khan Yunis's Nasser hospital has killed at least 5 patients after electricity and oxygen supplies were cut off. This is a hospital volunteer describing the forced evacuation ahead of Israel's incursion.
99% أخلت 99% of the people in Nasser Hospital evacuated. There are nearly 20 members of the medical staff still there. There is tension still. There is no protection or safety. Quadcopters are everywhere. Even ferocious dogs, which have monitoring cameras around their necks, are in the hospital in an aggressive way.
This comes as fears mount over a planned Israeli ground attack on some 1.4 million people in Rafah. Even the U.S. has said the move would be a disaster without a realistic evacuation plan. The UN and others say there's no plausible way to evacuate Rafah.
Evacuation to a safe place in Gaza is an illusion. We need to push back on the calls that we're all hearing from the authorities to say, you must help us move the people of Gaza to some safe place. This is an illusion.
Israeli airstrikes on Rafah continue to kill Palestinian civilians. This is the mother of one of the victims speaking earlier today.
My daughter's husband is from the Zarbi family. She died with all her family. I live in Miraj and she lives in Rafah. When I heard the news, I started screaming, asking my children to take me to see her. But they told me, "Where should we take you at night? Stay here." I told them to take me to see her, but they said that she was unrecognizable, and I said that even if it was only her flesh, I wanted to see her.
Close to 29,000 Palestinians have been killed and over 68,000 wounded in Israeli attacks since October 7th. Over 130 journalists have been killed in Gaza since October 7th, according to the local media office. The Committee to Protect Journalists says some 3/4 of all journalists killed last year died in Israel's assault on Gaza. Of the 99 journalists killed around the world in 2023, 72 were Palestinian. Students at Stanford University are ending a months-long sit-in to demand the university call for a ceasefire in Gaza and divest from Israeli companies complicit in war crimes, among other things. Stanford officials had started cracking down on the action, which began in October, threatening to arrest and discipline students who camped out on campus. But the school finally agreed to 2 meetings with the group to discuss their demands, leading to the decision to disband the longest continuous sit-in in Stanford's history. New York Judge Juan Merchan ruled that Donald Trump's hush money case can proceed, setting March 25th as a start date for the first-ever criminal trial of a former U.S. president. Trump's lawyers had sought to delay the trial, claiming it'll interfere with campaigning. Trump will be required to attend the trial, which is expected to last 6 weeks. Meanwhile, New York State Judge Arthur Engoron is expected to rule today on the $370 million civil fraud case against Trump for inflating his business's net worth to obtain more favorable loans. This comes as Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis took the stand in Georgia. Defense lawyers are seeking to remove Willis from the sweeping election subversion case against Trump and his allies over her romantic relationship with Nathan Wade, the top prosecutor in the case. Wade also took the stand Thursday as both parties denied any wrongdoing or any financial benefit from their personal relationship, which they say ended last year. Fani Willis sparred with Trump defense lawyers throughout the contentious hearing.
You've been intrusive into people's personal lives. You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020. I'm not on trial, no matter how hard you try to put me on trial.
Mary had a little man. The fall. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
Former President.
I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
$364 million Friday, you bastards. Oh, yeah.
Former President Trump awaits a ruling that could force him to pay hundreds of millions of dollars and bar him from doing business in New York, the city where he built his fortune.
Thousands of people employed, and now I have to come and justify myself to you?
Yes.
Trump has repeatedly denounced the case, attacked New York Attorney General Letitia James, who brought it, and disparaged Judge Arthur Engoron, who has already decided Trump conducted a decade's worth of business with fraudulent financial statements that exaggerated his wealth and overvalued his properties. It's a 1-2 punch for Trump. The ruling in the civil case is expected a day after a judge set Trump's first criminal trial for March 25th.
Oh, my God.
I'm going to have to sit here for months on a trial. I think it's ridiculous. It's unfair.
Trump looked on as his attorney complained the timing would make it impossible for the former president to campaign. But the judge said that's no legal reason to delay putting Trump on trial over allegations he tried to hide from voters, accusations of a tryst with porn actress Stormy Daniels, and his attempt to buy her silence. Trump's federal election interference case had been scheduled to go to trial first, but has been delayed by appeals. And overnight, Trump again asked the U.S. Supreme Court to put the case on pause, arguing special counsel Jack Smith is rushing to trial so he can secure a conviction before the November election. If convicted here in New York, Trump would be running for president as a felon. And if he wins, he would not be able to pardon himself.
Happy Friday, you bastard. Happy $364 million civil fraud award Friday, everybody. I just and he's banned from doing business in New York City, in New York State, actually, for 3 years. For 3 stinking years. And there's some orders in here about people not lending to him. You know, you can't lend to him for a while. It's a beautiful thing. He's going to be livid. It's going to be, he must be like throwing ketchup at the wall right now. He must be, it's like, the whole day, yesterday too, it's been like Trump on trial on the TV. It's like Trump on trial is like Malcolm in the Middle. Like, it's not a bad show. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's not everybody's thing, but it's not bad. You know? I mean, this is finally something that resembles, feels like, tastes like, seems like, looks like, maybe it's related to, in a weird way, 6 degrees of separation from justice. And why do I say it like that? Because it's been a long time coming. We have been waiting. You know, the Stormy Daniels thing, the fraud that was committed by, against us, actually. The reason why the Stormy Daniels thing was funneled through law firms and Michael Cohen had to go to jail for 3 years and all this was because that was election fraud too, right? That was disguising what was a campaign finance expenditure as a payment of a retainer for Michael Cohen, the lawyer. It was fraud. It was fraudulently characterized as being payment for Michael Cohen's retainer when it was really a payment to Stormy Daniels to keep her to tell her to shut up about it because he didn't want us, the voters, to know about it so close to the election. So that's why it's fraud, okay? Because when you and this whole business fraud case that was just first of all, Judge Engoron had determined that Donald Trump was liable for committing fraud at the Trump Organization months ago. And then we had the second portion of the trial, which was the damages portion of the trial. And, of course, Donald Trump early on waived the jury trial request. He didn't want a jury trial because Donald Trump felt like he couldn't find a fair jury in New York, and so he didn't want a jury trial. He wanted the judge. I guess it's not a good trial strategy to threaten the life of the judge and or his, what would you call her? She was his, I forget what the word is, clerk. There's so many stories in my head right now. Yeah, he threatened the life of his law clerk because he didn't like where she sat in the courtroom, which was on the bench. like beside the judge. She sat there. And he had a problem with the seating. He had a problem, as if it was something at Magaloco, with the place cards being out of place or some such crap. And so because he objected to the seating arrangement that Judge Engoron prefers in his courtroom, Donald Trump then began to threaten, within an inch of her life, the law clerk and Judge Engoron. So if anybody ever is on trial for, $400 million worth of business fraud, I would suggest that you not do as Trump did. You not do as he does. You not insult the judge. You don't threaten the life of his law clerk. Do you know what I mean? It's just now as a strategy, it's not great. Not the best. Just saying. File that, because we all know we'll all be facing, business fraud trials, where we committed business fraud for, 40 years and said that, we had loans that were made to us that were never made to us so that we could deduct the fantasy interest on our taxes each and every year so that our tax burden would come in at a low bargain basement price of zero. Only to find out in a trial that loan never existed. Actually, I don't even think we found that out at trial. I think we found that out after the trial. I think the way that we found out that the loan that Donald Trump kept deducting the interest payments for on his tax returns for years now in order to come up with a zero obligation to pay any taxes under the United States Constitution, okay, was fake. I think we found out that that loan didn't exist because the person who was put in charge of the payments that would be required to be made had an issue with the documents and said that they could not locate that loan. And that's how we found out that that loan didn't even exist. So not only is he a tax cheat, not only did he commit business fraud, not only can he do business in New York for like 3 years, but Eric and Don Jr. are also now banned to do business in New York for 3 years, okay? So the whole damn family has been found, to be liable for committing fraud in the city of their birth. How embarrassing and how detrimental to the organization, whatever's left of it. So that was good. And we needed something good. Why? Because meanwhile, while we're all on verdict watch, we're still on verdict watch. You understand? Just because Engoron has ordered Donald Trump to pay $335 million and banned the kids and banned Donald from doing business in New York for 3 years, all these things, right? We're still on verdict watch because the Supreme Court any second is now free to weigh in on the January 6th issue of immunity. Absolute immunity from prosecution in the January 6th matter. Why? Well, that's a Jack Smith deal. Okay, this is criminal. The thing that we saw today was a civil trial, civil fraud. Okay, that Weisselberg decided he would lie in that trial too. He would commit perjury in that trial too. Didn't it's not a good look. It's just not good. But anyway, Donald Trump, Jack Smith had until Monday to respond to the Supreme Court and to ask them not to take up the Donald Trump absolute immunity case after the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, the 10th Circuit, had a unanimous finding that Donald Trump was not going to enjoy absolute immunity because he was a past president, and that, in fact, no presidents have absolute immunity once they leave office. Okay. And it was a unanimous decision. It was well written. We all know that. So Jack Smith, Donald Trump had a few days to ask, did he want the whole D.C. Circuit to hear his case or did he want to go to the Supremes? He chose the Supremes. So Jack Smith had until Monday to write his brief to the Supremes, telling them, his position. There's no need to hear this, okay? It's just like, what is the dispute you would settle? There isn't any, right? So don't.
Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
The Bob Cesca Show. Bob Cesca.
Remember, going back to 2016, Chez and I said that the Russia story was the biggest story of our time. Well, now it's getting even bigger. This is back. Exactly. Europe right now is going bananas. This was leading the news all over Europe, and for good cause, because Donald Trump pledged to encourage Vladimir Putin to invade Europe.
Our friends are worried.
Yes.
One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills.
This guy doesn't pay any of his bills famously. What nerve does he have to say, you got to pay your bills? You got to pay. Like the Goomba that he is.
And if he doesn't pay, then E. Jean Carroll gets to raid Mar-a-Lago. So it's only fair, right?
This is Donald Trump pledging to allow Russia to invade Europe. Other than Canada and the United States, all of the NATO signatory nations are all European nations. So when Donald Trump talks about encouraging Russia to invade a NATO nation that doesn't pay, you got to pay, he's talking about allowing Russia to invade Europe. So what we can assume out of all of this is that Donald Trump not only will allow Russia to fully annex Ukraine if he becomes president, but then he will encourage Russia to move on to invading Eastern Europe.
While Americans are telling pollsters that they think Biden is too old, Trump is telling Russia to invade the free world. Does that mean anything to anyone?
Bob Cesca.
It's the Bob Cesca Show. New episodes every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, everywhere you get your podcasts, and at bobcescashow.com.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2011. That was the day Madison public school teachers held a sick-out in opposition to Governor Scott Walker's anti-labor assaults. Walker had introduced Assembly Bill 11, later known as Act 10. This union-busting bill proposed the elimination of collective bargaining rights for public sector workers regarding health and pension benefits, limited wage increases, eliminated dues collection, and mandated annual union recertification. Immediately, tens of thousands of protesters descended on the state capitol, chanting, "Kill the bill," and took part in hearings to voice their opposition. Area schools remained closed for days as protests continued to grow throughout the spring. While parts of Act 10 have been ruled unconstitutional in the years since, the legislation has nonetheless wreaked havoc. A series in Milwaukee's Journal Sentinel titled Act 10 at 5 examined how public school teachers have fared since the Madison uprising. They found that 75% of school districts are losing teachers, retirements have surged, less are entering the profession, and most job hop to the highest salary offers. The teachers' unions report major losses. MTEA notes that membership is down 30%. WEAC reports that membership and dues collection were cut in half. Seniority rights have evaporated and layoffs are increasingly tied to performance. Annual salary growth has slowed, stopped, or reversed. Teacher morale is low in many districts. Teachers often complain of additional unpaid duties, larger class sizes, and more performance reviews. There are new restrictions on attire as well as speech and political activities. If there is any good news, it is that unions survive annual recertification and remaining members are more active and more engaged in union work.
Don't give up. Don't give up. What's true?
All things Randy at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
We've all just received reports that Alexei Navalny has died in Russia. This is, of course, terrible news, which we are working to confirm. My prayers are with his family, including his wife, Yulia, who is with us today. And if confirmed, this would be a further sign of Putin's brutality. Whatever story they tell, let us be clear, Russia is responsible. And we will have more to say on this later.
This is just horrible news. I mean, this is just earth-shattering. If you're familiar with who Alexei Navalny is, if you watch the Academy Award-winning documentary Navalny, which I've watched it like 2 or 3 times already. It is an amazing amount of courage. It is an amazing amount of fortitude that this entire family of his wife Yulia, he's got 2 kids, the people who were around him, who were down with this, pushback in a place where there is no free speech, in a place where you stand up and offer yourself as a political opponent to the autocrat Putin, and guess what happens to you? You either end up pushed out a window, dead, piano falls on you, or maybe you reach for the handle while you're in the UK and there's, some sort of a poison on it and you and your daughter die. Do you know what I'm saying? Now, Navalny had been tortured by Putin so many times. He had been poisoned by Putin. He had this, I don't know if you remember this or not. Let's go back to the beginning of the Navalny story first, okay? And then just keep in mind, as I'm telling you, that the man who's just been banned from applying for a loan can't even ask to borrow money. He's so rich. He's so, he's such a force to reckon with, this Donald Trump businessman is. Now he can't borrow another nickel. He's going to have to liquidate his fortune because a court has finally held him accountable for all his lies, for all his cheating, for all his fraud, for all of his disgusting behavior that allowed himself to cloak himself in the fake clothes of a king, of an emperor, when really he had no clothes. Do you get that parable now? I hope you do. Anyway, keep in mind that Donald Trump wants to be Vladimir Putin. He really does, as I tell you this story. So when Putin actually took himself out of the presidency for a year, took a little breather there, right, and put Medvedev in charge of Russia for 1 year, that was about 2011. That's when Alexei Navalny decided that he was going to run for office. He was going to run to be, the Russian president. And what really was shocking to Putin, because Putin, of course, was going to retake the throne a year later, right, and stay there and never leave, was how many people supported Alexei Navalny. How many? And Alexei Navalny ran on an anti-corruption platform, much like Zelensky in Ukraine. And so, of course, they had to say Navalny was everything under the sun. He was a Nazi and blah, blah. But why would they pay any attention to this Alexei Navalny guy in the first place? Why didn't they, why did they take him seriously? Well, of all of the people that get followings in Russia, Navalny literally captured the imagination of the people in the same way that Zelensky had. And just people started to show up at his rallies. People started to, be convinced that he understood the plight of the ordinary Russian, that he understood that they were being stolen from, that there was so much corruption, and that if you weren't on the inside ring of Putin's circle of, largesse, that you could starve in not just the suburbs of St. Pete and the suburbs of Moscow and these Stalinist buildings that I was able to see for myself because, yes, I fled. Remember, I told you I took a couple of subway stops. I wasn't supposed to. And I saw what was, outside of the main city. And I was talking to my friend who immigrated from Cuba years and years ago. Okay, she came here as an 18-year-old. She's my age now. Okay, Estella. And I was just talking to her, and she goes, Randy, what they do is they put makeup on a certain, square footage, a certain, spot where tourists might come if they ever opened up to tourism, or where, heads of state might come if they were coming to see your capital, whatever. And then once you leave that circle of makeup, okay, what's left is like the, oh my God, grinding life of an ordinary Cuban or an ordinary American, right? And then I said, yeah, and Haiti too. She goes, oh, don't even talk about Haiti. Don't even talk about it. So that's what goes on in Russia too. And what's really sickening is Tucker Carlson is over there and he knows this. He knows it. He knows that if you leave Moscow, where the tourists go, or if you leave St. Petersburg, the area where the tourists go, right, that what you find are these old 1950s Stalinist-built apartment blocks. You've seen what Ukraine looked like after it was bombed, right? You saw the apartment blocks. Those were luxury buildings next to what Russia looks like. And the streets are filthy, okay? And there's so much graffiti on every single brick building. 10 people live in one apartment. I mean, it's really bad. It's grinding. It's really ugly. Anyway, that's what, Putin is in charge of, right? And so Navalny was able to literally speak to and get ordinary Russians to listen to him, pay attention to him. And for some strange reason, he was the guy that broke out from the pack. And 100,000 people or more were showing up to his rallies. 100,000 people or more. And that is something Putin cannot have. Putin cannot have protest in Russia. He's facing some now, a little bit, because the Russian wives want their husbands back. Some of them perhaps have not been told that they've been used as cannon fodder and are never coming back. I don't know. Others of them see their husbands deployed for, 2 years at a clip, and their husbands might be in their late 40s, early 50s, and they're like, he's tired. You understand? Send him home. So he can't afford to piss off the Russian mothers. Okay, this is something that he's afraid of. But look at Navalny getting 100,000 people to show up. That's a threat. So Navalny became a threat in about 2011 to Vlad. Navalny was going all over the world at this point, and one of the things that Putin did to Navalny early on was he literally threw green dye. I don't know how many people will remember this, but he took like green dye and threw it at Navalny's face because he thought that if he dyed Navalny green, he would not be able to use social media. He would not be able to do YouTube videos. He wouldn't be able to talk to the Russian people because he would be too ashamed or embarrassed because he was green and wouldn't do. And Navalny was like, F you. F you. And he said, and he explained why the green and why it was done. And he was like, no, it's not going to keep me from doing what I'm doing here because Russia deserves to be free and prosperous. Russia deserves not to give all its money to the government, only to see that money given to, Vladimir Putin's, mob buddies, who then, kick back to him. Then he was in Germany, and I think everybody will remember, he was poisoned with Novichok, a nerve agent, a Russian military nerve agent. And he had to recover. He was near death in a German hospital. Miraculously, he recovered. He was placed under arrest in Russia, and he went back to Russia knowing he'd be jailed.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
This is Stephanie Miller, and here's what you missed. All roads lead to Putin, right? I mean, it is just extra. Even for you, you had to be like, wow, he just said that out loud? Mm-hmm. I will encourage Russia to attack NATO countries? I mean, your thoughts.
Oh, yeah. And well, it's absolutely abhorrent. I mean, the man is a traitor at every level.
You got to be happy about up your way there. New York 3, another Democratic win. George Santos' seat flips blue. And, people on the ground there saying it's because the Republicans can't govern because they saw them, shoot down their own border bill, which included money for Ukraine, right? I think people really see what's happening.
Absolutely. And let's just be honest. The guy who won was a moderate Democrat who is hardline anti-immigration because there's really big immigration problems in New York City right now, principally because of the governor of Florida and the governor of Texas shipping people up to New York City. So he ran on that platform, which would have been great for the immigration bill if the Republicans hadn't killed it, of course. So it's becoming clear that, these hardcore Republican districts, that, George pathological lying Santos, won that district by 7 points.
Yeah.
7 points. And now he lost it by 16, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
The Republicans are in big trouble, certainly here in upstate New York. Also, the courts ruled that redistricting plan that gave the Republicans 5 extra seats in New York was drawn up poorly, and that the Democratic House of Representatives here, the Democratic Assembly, is going to redo the redistricting. So it's going to go back to normal. We'll get those seats back.
Yeah.
And, the chance of Taking back Congress is very good.
Hear all this and more on the next Stephanie Miller Show.
Joe Biden is ready to protect America's southern border, crack down on illegal crossings, set tough but fair new standards, build up Border Patrol, adding thousands of new agents, stop the flow of fentanyl, child sex traffickers, and even terrorists. There's only one problem.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump has ordered Republicans to block the toughest immigration bill in decades. For all their tough talk, their solution is to do nothing, because Donald Trump needs chaos to win.
He'd rather weaponize this issue than actually solve it.
If he wins, he'll do nothing, just like last time. His wall, a joke. Donald Trump doesn't care if your family's safety or the lives of law enforcement officers are in the balance. He's on the side of the cartels, coyotes, and child traffickers. There's only one candidate who will do something about our border, and it was never Donald Trump.
Bruce King, former governor of New Mexico, often baffled people with his convoluted use of words, like the time he vetoed a loan shark bill he had previously agreed to sign. "But Governor," squealed the lender's lobbyist, "we had your commitment." Unfazed, King said, "Now, boys, we all know that a commitment is not a promise." In this case, King's linguistic backflip was virtuous, for it killed a bad bill. But now come banking giants themselves, doing a shameful backflip on their widely publicized Scouts Honor promise to do the right thing for humanity on a true life-and-death issue, climate change. It was only 2 years ago that Bank of America, J.P. Morgan Chase, and other Wall Street behemoths loudly proclaimed their conversion.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randy, call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844. As Russia's leading opposition figure, Alexei Navalny piled pressure on the Kremlin and put a target on his back. Born in 1976 in what was then the Soviet Union, Navalny trained as a lawyer and rose to prominence as a political blogger. In 2011, he started the Anti-Corruption Foundation, which exposed the extravagant wealth of Russian officials, including President Vladimir Putin.
The biggest thing that Putin is afraid of is public discontent in Russia, and that is why it's so afraid of opposition leaders.
Navalny's and Putin's stars were intertwined. As Putin tightened his grip on power, Navalny became a leading figure at anti-government protests. "We will force them to live by the law because we hold the power here," he shouted. He was arrested countless times and turned attacks to his advantage. In 2017, after announcing his intentions to run for president, Navalny was attacked with green dye twice. "Maybe the Kremlin thinks that I will not record videos with a green face," he said, "but now even more people will watch." In 2019, as Navalny's Anti-Corruption Foundation gained support nationally, police raided their offices and arrested several activists, including, of course, Navalny. But in 2020, his life was threatened like never before. On a plane traveling from Siberia to Moscow, Navalny became deathly ill. He fell into a coma and was put on a ventilator. While recovering in a German hospital, investigators revealed he had been poisoned with Novichok, a Soviet-era neurotoxin. Navalny blamed Putin for the attack, a claim the Kremlin denies. Miraculously, Navalny recovered and participated in the investigation into his own poisoning, documenting the whole thing on social media. Despite the threats against his life, in January 2021, Navalny and his wife Yulia voluntarily returned to Moscow, where he was immediately arrested, ostensibly for violating the terms of a 2014 embezzlement case. Once in jail, he was tried and sentenced to more than 9 years in a maximum security prison. Navalny said the charges were politically motivated. But even behind bars, he found ways to make his voice heard, using social media to protest the Ukraine war and needle those in power. His legacy is one of defiance, a constant thorn in the side of the Kremlin.
Unbelievable. I mean, the bravery of him, the courage of him, it's really pretty amazing. And, like when he was in Germany and the Novichok incident happened and he recovered miraculously in a German hospital that was able to document the Novichok. He actually did not have to go back, but he wanted to go back. He knew he'd be arrested, and he just said, look, it's my country, and, I'm going to do everything I can for my country. And he went back, and, of course, they arrested him. His wife, his family, I mean, they have been so supportive of him. And last year, a documentary about his, courage and his bravery and his love of his country actually won an Academy Award. It was an amazing thing. And at the last scene, this is from the documentary. The last scene in the documentary, I think it's the last scene. He was saying, hey, listen, if I'm killed, of course he meant when I'm killed. I just want you to know, don't give up. Don't give up. This doesn't want to play.
My message for the situation when I'm killed is very simple: not give up.
Do me a favor, answer this one in Russian.
Listen, I've got something very obvious to tell you. You're not allowed to give up. If they decide to kill me, it means that we are incredibly strong. We need to utilize this power, to not give up, to remember we are a huge power that is being oppressed by these bad dudes. We don't realize how strong we actually are. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. So don't be inactive.
Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. So the only way evil can actually do its thing is if good people do nothing. So there's something to learn from Alexei right there. If I'm killed, don't give up. Don't give up, everybody. His wife, Yulia, there's a Munich conference right now happening in Germany, and she is there, and so is Kamala. That's where Kamala released the early morning, announcement, the sad announcement that Navalny had died in prison. And you know what's amazing? This totally amazed me. So, I mean, according to all sources, this particular clip right here, this is very short. This is Alexei Navalny in prison yesterday.
Ваша честь, я жду, я вам направлю номер своего лицевого счета, чтобы вы с вашей огромной зарплатой федерального судьи подогревали мой лицевой счет, потому что деньги...
So, I know he's speaking Russian, but does he look like he's near death's door? Does he look like he's ill? Does he look like he's sick? Does he look like, a man who's got, minutes? Yeah, no, he looked pretty healthy to me, and that is dated yesterday. That was dated 15/2/24, which would be February 15th, in the rest of the world. In the United States, no, it's we don't have 15 months. Everybody go, what month is 15? Yeah. But he looked pretty healthy to me. So the official story now from Russia is he went for a walk, and he just collapsed, and they administered CPR, I don't know who they are, and then they called for a medical, guy to come to, where he was. He was in a above the Arctic Circle, above the Arctic Circle. And if you've ever, gone down any of the rabbit holes that are available on the YouTube, on Russian Arctic Circle towns, some of them are called like the coldest place on Earth. Okay, if you ever, if you haven't done that, you should do it, because there's places on this planet that are just bizarre, and people literally, like few of them, but people literally live there. They live there. Some are indigenous people. Others are living in a prison camp. Anyway, Navalny, remember in December he disappeared? Nobody knew where he was for about 3 weeks. Everybody was looking for him. It turns out that the Russians the Russian government said he didn't disappear. We were moving him to a Stalin-era work camp that's located above the Arctic Circle. And he had been traveling there for the whole 3 weeks, and they didn't tell anybody who could report out to you his whereabouts that they were doing this, and that's why you couldn't find him. It's like a Where's Waldo for 3 weeks. Okay, so now they say he's there. That's where he is. He started to complain about having stomach pain, and then all of a sudden he apparently goes for a walk where it's minus 28 degrees Fahrenheit right now and collapses.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
Decades of leadership, a lifetime of experience, and rock-solid determination to rebuild America. Joe Biden's plan for America's economic comeback is working. The highest job growth in the world. Inflation coming down faster than any other major nation. The prices families pay for everything from gas to groceries falling fast. Hope and optimism coming back. His tireless work to build a stronger America means we're respected again. And a respected America is a safer America. Joe Biden's years have taught him leadership, wisdom, toughness, how to ignore the noise and focus on the people. He's a president for every American, making the hard decisions with compassion, heart, and respect. That's Joe Biden, America's president. Something is happening in American politics. For decades, Republicans called themselves the party of strength in foreign policy. Today, the Republican Party attacks our military.
Some of the dumbest people I've ever met in my life.
And cozies up to our enemies.
Hezbollah is very smart. They're all very smart.
Republican senators are blocking key military appointments, making America less safe.
This sweeping hold is undermining America's military readiness.
Republicans are helping Vladimir Putin by calling for the end of military aid to the brave Ukrainians.
Under Republican, not another penny will go to Ukraine.
Today, President Joe Biden is the voice of a strong America.
Let there be no doubt, the United States has Israel's back.
This is an American president.
We cannot and will not let terrorists like Hamas, tyrants like Putin win.
President Joe Biden, America's president.
Hey, Donald, we noticed something. More and more people are saying it. You're weak. You seem unsteady. You need help getting around. And wow.
An anonymous, really an anonymous country, and you deserve.
Are you sure you don't have dementia? It runs in the family. Have you had a real doctor check you out? You keep confusing things.
And we did with Obama. We won an election.
Getting the facts wrong.
We just left pleasure. Paradise. Go paradise.
People laugh about it, about you, even your own people behind your back. You're winning the primary, but losing your power, your strength, your manhood. Face it, Donald. You're just projecting when you call Joe Biden old. He's stronger than you, fitter than you, smarter than you, a better man and a better president. Anyone can see it. And when you lay there at night, alone, you know we're right. You're falling apart, Donald, breaking down, right in front of our eyes.
God bless the United States.
He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one. I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
You can do anything. Grab him by the pussy.
He's not a war hero.
War hero. I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't lose any voters.
Very fine people, on both sides.
I don't know what I said. I don't remember. I am your retribution. I am your retribution.
Whether you're listening to Leslie Marshall each Tuesday through Friday or Brad Bannon each Monday, you can hear them from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern on the Progressive Voices Network. Here's a sample of what you'll hear.
The director of the United Steelworkers District 4, Dave Wasura. Unions give workers a voice in shaping their communities, and that includes increased civic engagement, more focused political power for working families. It's a win-win-win all around because you have, the wages. Obviously, you're improving the surrounding community because there's job creation. There are wages that are increased, not just at the union, but also the non-union facilities because they raise the bar. But then there's more civic engagement, and then there's more power among the community, with their elected officials or to change who their elected officials are to benefit them. And that all comes back to, again, the unions and the unions fighting for their workers.
Don't give up. Don't give up. What's true?
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Let's remember, yes, Alexei Navalny was a young opposition leader, mostly focused on anti-corruption. And what corrupt leaders fear the most are foundations, his anti-corruption foundation that was focused on that. And back in 2011 and 2012, when there were hundreds of thousands of people on the streets of Moscow, I think a lot of Americans and maybe most of the world have forgotten that. But that's when I was ambassador. There were hundreds of thousands of people rallying at Navalny's demonstrations, anti-corruption and for democracy. And it was, I think, important to remember that there was a time when millions of people supported people like Mr. Navalny. He ran for mayor in the following year, in 2013. He was not allowed to campaign. He was not allowed on TV, and he gained almost a third of the votes. So he was a popular leader that, remember, Putin tried to kill him before. He poisoned him very clearly. He was shipped out of Germany. They barely survived. And on that moment, he finally recovered. Many people said, Alexei, do not go back. I was in touch with him right before he flew back. But he said to me, Mike, this is my country. I'm not going to let this guy chase me out of it. And as he arrived, they put him in prison. They arrested him. He's been in prison ever since. And that the conditions under which he's been living over the last several years have been worse and worse and worse. And gradually that, I think, let's wait till we see all the autopsy and all that. But let's be crystal clear. They were slowly killing him, and he was killed today because he was the greatest threat to Putin's corrupt rule.
And I don't know if you realize this or not, just so you're aware, next month, March, is when Vladimir Putin's, I don't even know what to call it, his election? What do you call that? What do you call it? His installation, where he gets 98% of the vote? Yeah, next month is the Russian election. That's going to, reinstall Vlad by, I don't know, 91, 92, maybe 98% of the vote. I don't know why he had to kill him. Obviously, this was done earlier, meaning Navalny had been complaining about, he went on a hunger strike in prison when he was first put in prison. When he first returned from Germany after the Novichok poisoning, and nobody expected him to survive that, but he did. So, not to be confused with the other guy that died of polonium poisoning. See, this is what Vlad does. So you kind of he kind of leaves fingerprints on the people that he kills. He either throws them out of windows, pianos fall on their head. Some of them are poisoned with polonium. Others of them are poisoned with Novichok. Right. But he was complaining that his after this is way after he started eating again. That his stomach was killing him. And his wife, Yulia, and, there are other people that actually check on him all the time who are allowed to visit him in these Russian gulags, right? But this one was up above the Arctic Circle. And they still were going up there to check on him. And that's how we found out he was missing. Anyway, his stomach was killing him, he said. So people feel like he had been poisoned with a slower acting poison, and that's why, he's dead, but that the date of his death was not something you could predict. It was just a slow, disgusting, painful, poisoning death. Because that's what Vlad does. That's what he does. So, I mean, here's a really sick thing. Pro-Putin journalists, like Tucker Carlson, is over in Russia, and you know that he's been posting these crazy videos of the fabulous Stalin-era subway system, which was built with the tax money of the people that Stalin was actually murdering in the tens of millions during the Stalin era of Russia. Russia's always been a dank, dark, disgusting, a very depressing place. In fact, if you go there, you will never see more despairing people than in Russia. People are miserable there. They are just so unhappy there because there's nothing to be happy about. They don't hope that things will change. They have surrendered to the idea that for the duration of their lifetime, Vladimir Putin will be their president. Nothing will ever change. Nothing can ever change. Russia is never going to change. It's been this way since, Catherine the Great, and it's going to stay this way. Okay? It's never, ever, ever going to change, even though it attempted to during Catherine. Catherine, sort of said, oh, we'll free the serfs. We'll give them, and we'll educate the women. We'll educate people. We'll give them education. And then she realized, oh, crap, once they start thinking for themselves, they go after the monarchy. They don't want to see all the money go to us. Oh, crap. All right, never mind. But the people currently in contemporary Russia, they have absolutely no hopes and dreams for a better future. I mean, it's not something that they can foresee. Okay? And that's why when a guy like Navalny comes along, they're like, listen, I don't think it'll succeed, but this is really exciting that there is somebody who has the courage, somebody who can be poisoned, somebody who could have green permanent dye thrown in their face, somebody who could be sent to a Siberian prison, somebody who can go to a prison above the Arctic Circle. Somebody who can be slowly poisoned, who still will sit in front of the camera and say, don't ever give up. You shouldn't do that. Don't give up. We are a large movement. We are a great bunch of people. And there's so many more of us than there are of them. Okay? And if everybody would just show up at the same place at the same time, they'd be freaked out. They wouldn't know what to do about you. And that's why he went back to Russia, even though he knew he would be, imprisoned. Listen, this is the day that, is this the day? Well, this was when he was interviewed by Christiane Amanpour. This is 4 years ago. That's when all this happened. Okay, 4 years ago, it was 2020. And he told Christiane Amanpour he's going back to Russia. And she's like, but you know what's going to happen to you. And he's like, but I'm going.
Why do you want to go back? And I guess, do you think you'll be safe when you go back?
Well, I don't think that I can have such a privilege being safe in Russia, but I have to go back because I don't want these, groups of killers exist in Russia. I don't want Putin be ruling of Russia. I don't want him being president. I don't want him being Tsar of Russia because, he's killing people. He's the reason why the whole country is degrading. He's the reason why people are so poor. We have 25 million people living below the poverty line. And the whole degradation of system, fortunately for me, including system of assassination of people, he's the reason of that. And I want to go back and try to change it.
Okay, so that's Navalny, okay, and his bravery. And here's Tucker Carlson. Here he is.
What was radicalizing, very shocking and very disturbing for me was the city of Moscow, where I'd never been, the biggest city in Europe, 13 million people. And it is so much nicer than any city in my country. I had no idea. My father spent a lot of time there in the 80s when he worked for the US government and barely had electricity. And now it is so much cleaner. and safer and prettier aesthetically, its architecture, its food, its service, than any country, city in the United States that you have to, and this is non-ideological, how did that happen? How did that happen? And at a certain point, I don't think the average person cares as much about abstractions as about the concrete reality of his life. And if you can't use your subway, for example, as many people are afraid to in New York City because it's too dangerous, you have to sort of wonder, like, isn't that the ultimate measure of leadership? And that's true, by the way, it's radicalizing for an American to go to Moscow. I didn't know that, I've learned it this week, to Singapore, to Tokyo, to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Because these cities, no matter how we're told they're run and on what principles they're run, are wonderful places to live that don't have rampant inflation, where you're not going to get raped.
Sir,
excuse me. What is that?
What is that? That is not a free press. That's why people are raped in Russia, but you just never hear about it. The food in Russia is disgusting, first of all. Okay, it's really vile. They eat this thing, it's called bilka. It's a little like, it's not quite a sardine. It's a little fish, though, like a sardine. And they put that, the little bilka, on a piece of pumpernickel, brown bread, and that's lunch. What is he talking about? Again, if you go outside of Moscow, outside of St. Petersburg, okay, it's grotesque. People, now Navalny told you, this is why people are so poor. All the money goes to where Vlad goes, okay? He lives in a mansion. They live in a hovel.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
911, what's your emergency?
America's healthcare system is broken, and people are dying.
Welcome to Code WAC, where we shine a light on America's callous healthcare system, how it hurts us, and what we can do about it. I'm your host, Brenda Gazzar. This time on Code WAC. Some states are making it easier for trans and non-binary individuals to get gender-affirming care, which can include medical interventions such as hormone replacement therapy or transition surgery to help them align various aspects of their lives with their gender identity. But a record number of bans were passed last year to outlaw or limit such care. What kind of toll does this take on those in these communities? What policy solutions are needed to ensure they have access to the medical care they need? To find out, we spoke to Ash Orr, a trans organizer from West Virginia and press relations manager for the National Center for Transgender Equality, or NCTE.
There's been a lot of impacts that we have seen here on our youth. You know, we saw in 2023 alone over 500 bills introduced that targeted LGBTQ plus rights, and over 400 of these bills targeted the rights of the trans community, and close to 150 of these bills specifically aimed to restrict or outright access or ban access to life-saving gender-affirming care for youth, which in some cases was as old as 25. We now have 21 states that have passed bans on gender-affirming care, and these bans include substantial financial and professional penalties for the providers that do provide this necessary care to patients.
Get the full Code WAC story on ProgressiveVoices.com and on the PV app. Catch all our episodes by subscribing to Code WAC wherever you find your podcasts. This podcast is powered by Heal California, a nonprofit that uplifts the voices of those fighting for healthcare reform around the country. Until next time, stay healthy.
Now, the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn presents the Green News Report.
We don't know who it belongs to. We have no idea where it came from. And we also don't know all that it contains.
Mysterious oil spill triggers national emergency in Trinidad and Tobago.
Climate experts are sounding the alarm over a troubling new report showing Greenland is getting greener.
Big changes underway as Greenland warms. Plus,
cocoa beans are a hot commodity right now. In fact, they've never been more expensive.
Climate change has come for your chocolate.
But not in time for Valentine's Day.
All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
This is some terrible news because I just learned that climate change is actually threatening cocoa production, which means less chocolate for people who love it like me, and that changes everything.
Oh, so now you give a damn, eh, lady? Whatever it takes. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, if they didn't care about climate change coming for their beer or their coffee, maybe they'll start giving a damn now that it's threatening their chocolate.
I hope so.
I guess you do. What else do you have for us today, Des?
Well, first, very sad news. A national emergency has been declared in the Caribbean island nation of Trinidad and Tobago after an abandoned, capsized barge grounded on a coral reef and ruptured, dumping massive amounts of oil. Crews are working round the clock to clean up and contain the nearly 8-mile-long spill that has fouled the island's pristine beaches at the height of its tourism season. As we go to air, the Prime Minister says it is still unclear who owns the vessel, how much oil has spilled, and how much still remains in the barge.
They have no idea where this ship came from? It just washed up and spilled?
They have an idea about where the ship came from, but its ownership is still unclear. It was being towed from one island to the next, but then it was abandoned somehow at some point.
Wow.
2 major studies this week focus on Greenland and the consequences of its accelerating ice melt due to global warming. The first study projects that so much fresh water is flowing from Greenland into the Atlantic Ocean that it could hit a tipping point earlier than expected that would weaken or shut down a critical system of ocean currents that redistribute heat from the tropics to the poles. The researchers say it is not clear when that might occur, but a shutdown would severely disrupt the global climate.
That sounds even worse than expensive chocolate.
The second study finds that Greenland is getting greener. Satellite data show significant areas of Greenland now have vegetation where ice has disappeared as the planet warms due to human activities. Since the 1980s, 11,000 square miles of Greenland's ice sheet and glaciers have melted, but nearly 3 times that area has been replaced by barren rock, shrubs, and methane-producing wetlands. The ecosystem shift is also altering the flow of nutrients into coastal waters, affecting marine life and contributing to rising sea levels. In other news, if Valentine's Day chocolate seemed extra expensive this year, you're not wrong. Man-made climate change has come for chocolate, hitting hard in West Africa, which produces 60% of the world's cocoa, the key ingredient in chocolate. Cocoa plants require very specific growing conditions, but extreme heat and drought have hammered cocoa yields for the last 3 years, reducing supply and sending prices soaring to new record highs.
Thanks, Joe Biden.
Wildfires are reversing hard-won gains against air pollution across the U.S. A new study by nonprofit First Street finds that air quality has been declining since 2016 due to man-made global warming. Rising temperatures have boosted levels of dangerous ozone in the air, and increasing heat and drought is worsening wildfires, causing smoke to reach more areas of the United States. The new study details how and where air pollution from wildfires will increase over the next 25 years, exposing about half of all Americans to unhealthy levels of air pollution, raising the risk of heart and lung disease.
What else you got for us, Chuckles?
Well, some better news. Walmart, the nation's largest retailer, is addressing the lack of electric vehicle charging stations. Late last week, the retail giant announced it is expanding its fledgling EV fast charger network at nearly 1,000 new and existing stores across the U.S. over the next few years. 90% of the U.S. population lives within 10 miles of a Walmart. And finally, beloved science communicator Bill Nye on CNN recently offered some hope on climate change in the form of action.
If you want to do something about it, 2 things I tell everybody. Talk about it. And then the thing to do about it really is to vote. We have people running for president in the world's most influential country who won't even talk about climate change, let alone talk about what they're going to do about it.
Yeah, well, wait till they can't afford chocolate. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Please help Progressive Voices support the Green News Report by stopping by bradblog.com/donate.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America. From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
You know, it used to be every American understood that Russia, or at least the Russian government, was our enemy, right? You didn't have to grow up in the Cold War. Just watch any movie from that era. They all had the same commie villain in it, right? That's how it was for years until the Cold War was famously ended by renowned pugilist and diplomat Rocky Balboa, right? But for decades, it was us versus them. I mean, hell, we went to the moon just to stun on their asses, y'all. That's how it was. And now today, you have American boomers who grew up during all that, openly praising Russia out loud all the time. That's insane, y'all. Again, when these people were kids, if you so much as publicly implied that Tchaikovsky made good dancing plays, Senator McCarthy would materialize out of thin air and shove a band hammer up your ass, right? That's how it was. Yet now they're all over social media talking about how great Putin is. Why? Well, it's at least partially because Daddy Trump said so, of course, but it's also partly because they've identified Putin as being anti-woke, which is kind of all that matters, right? Sure, Russia has long stood opposed to the foundational precepts of our democracy, but these MAGA types see Putin over there saying things like, in Russia, we have only 2 genders and no black people. And they're like, say less, buddy. That's all I needed to hear. It's like, Jesus Christ. Nobody let these people find out that jihadists hate the gays so much, or else things are going to get really weird over here. There's a few things going on with this right now. First, the infamous interview. Never thought I'd find myself rooting for Putin to hurl a journalist out a window, but then I watched him sit there across from Tucker Carlson's I Just Smelled a Fart face for a couple hours, and I was just like, please defenestrate this man. But it didn't happen. I guess Tucker decided that lying to him and his legion of useful idiots would be better. So funny they believe what he said. Putin sitting there in this interview just like, well, Russia would never invade Poland. Do you have this in America? Do you do this? Right? Crazy, right? Putin's doing that because he wants America to stop funding Ukraine, and he very well may get his wish on account of the tire fire big top show that is the GOP House. House Leader MAGA Mike already said they weren't going to vote for more Ukraine funding because it doesn't include border support. Y'all killed the border support that y'all also wrote. Like, well, I don't know how anybody who works with these people has any hair left in their head. I really don't. But yeah, they don't want to fund Ukraine. Again, y'all, back in the day, if Russia so much as made another country sandwiches, we'd send a whole ass army over there and just start shooting everybody till they agreed to switch to cheeseburgers instead, right? But now that Russia's invaded an ally, which just so happens to have once hurt Trump's feelings, now all of a sudden the party of hawks thinks that war is a waste of money. All right. Also, Trump himself just publicly said that he would let Russia do, quote, whatever they wanted to any of our NATO allies if our ally was a little behind on the light bill, and his supporters lapped that insanity right up like they always do. Y'all, now more than ever, I wish we could somehow take the younger 1980s versions of these present-day papaws and bring them forward in time so they could whoop their own asses for somehow forgetting both that Donald Trump was nothing but a laughable silver spoon douchebag, and Ivan Drago was the bad guy.
Drago! Only Trey Crowder could get a Drago reference.
Oh, my God. Rooting for Putin
In
to
there.
toss a journalist out a window.
Oh, man. I love, if Putin was serving so much as we would go over there and make them switch over to, cheeseburgers. I'm seriously, but he's right. He's right about these papas. He's right about the 80-year-olds. He's right about the 70-year-olds. He's right about the 65-plus crowd. These were the same people that would say, Lucille Ball is a red. She's a commie bitch. And her husband, he's a commie too. Xavier Cugat and his band, all a bunch of commies. And now they're rooting for the commies. Now they're actually down with the plan. I mean, he's right. We ought to bring them back to their 1980s self so that they could kick their own asses. It's like that guy in Greg in North Carolina. It's like he would be one of those. Come back as your 80s self, Greg, and kick your own ass and leave us out of it. Really. I mean, it's unbelievable. Rootin' Tootin' Putin, everybody. They love him. There's nothing he could do that would be bad because Donald Trump likes him, and that's good enough for them. I mean, you understand why Donald Trump doesn't want to support Ukraine, right? You get how basic this is, how personal Donald Trump makes our national security for himself, right? The reason why Donald Trump doesn't like Zelensky is because Zelensky wouldn't find him dirt on Joe Biden. Remember that? The Ukraine call, the first impeachment of Donald Trump, had to do with a perfect phone call in which he literally threatened Zelensky with not getting American support if Russia invaded him, okay, unless he found him dirt on Joe Biden. And nothing has changed in Donald Trump's mind or in MAGA world about the validity of Zelensky and the democracy that is Ukraine. So what did they do? They run out there. I mean, Vladimir Putin is still out there saying the same damn thing. You know, when Tucker, our own personal propagandist in the, in the, well, he's not mainstream media anymore. Now he's like, I don't know, a space on Twitter. I have no earthly idea. But so when he went over there to interview his hero, his lifelong love partner, Vlad, he neglected to ask Vladimir Putin, like, where is Navalny, or how is Navalny, or, you know, like, why do you keep killing people that run against you, right? And he was called out on this, okay? He was called out on that.
I'll use the devil's advocate.
But advocate away.
Yes, okay, I'll tell you. You should challenge in the rules of an interview, and you're a master in your business. It's not for me to give you a lecture about that, but you should challenge some ideas. For instance, you didn't talk about freedom of speech in Russia. You did not talk about Navalny, about assassinations, about restrictions on opposition in the coming elections.
I didn't talk about the things that every other American media outlet talks about.
Why?
Exclusively.
Yes, this
because
is my
those
question.
are covered, and because I have spent my life talking to people who run countries in various countries and have concluded the following: that every leader kills people, including my leader. Every leader kills people. Some kill more than others. Leadership requires killing people. Sorry. That's why I wouldn't want to be a leader. That press restriction is universal in the United States. I know because I've lived it. Ask my former, I've had a lot of jobs. And I've done this for 34 years, and I know how it works. And there's more censorship in Russia than there is in the United States, but there's a great deal in the United States.
What?
And so, at a certain point, it's like people can decide whether they think, what countries they think are better, what systems they think are better. I just want to know what he thinks. That was the whole point.
About Navalny, but you didn't want to bring up any of the things that would make Vladimir uncomfortable, because if you did, you would never get the interview with Vladimir. And I'm pretty sure you had to submit your questions in advance to get the sit down with Vladimir, and you had to agree that you would not make Vladimir uncomfortable and ask him about anything, including the invasion into an unarmed nation called Ukraine, the bombing of maternity hospitals, or the death of, well, he wasn't dead yet, but the imprisonment of Alexei Navalny and the assassination of every single person who's had the temerity to run against Vladimir Putin. I'm sure Tucker Carlson had to agree to be a propagandist in order to get that sit down, because Christiane Amanpour, who is a journalist who, with the respect of the entirety of the world for her work over the last 40, 50 years, can't get a sit down with Vladimir Putin. None of the BBC journalists, none of the Guardian journalists, none of the independent journalists, no one can get a sit down with Vladimir Putin except for Tucker Carlson. So why would that be? How did that happen? Because he guaranteed him that he was going to prop him up, make him look good, and he showed him the questions. And none of the questions were going to be difficult to answer. And you know what Vlad did? He abused poor little sucker Tucker. He abused him. Know what he did? He treated Tucker Carlson to it's like a 45-minute to an hour lecture about the gripping topic of Russian history and how Vlad still thinks that Russia is the Soviet Union, and that no one has won their freedom. No one, not Estonia, not Lithuania, not Latvia, not Ukraine, certainly not Ukraine. No one, none of the Russian countries that are independent democracies now are free to be that. They belong to him, Putin.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes.
The Bob Cesca Show.
Bob Cesca. Remember, going back to 2016, Chez and I said that the Russia story was the biggest story of our time. Well, now it's getting even bigger. This is back. Exactly. Europe right now is going bananas. This was leading the news all over Europe, and for good cause, because Donald Trump pledged to encourage Vladimir Putin to invade Europe.
Our friends are worried.
Yes.
One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills.
This guy doesn't pay any of his bills famously. What nerve does he have to say, you got to pay your bills? You got to pay. Like the Goomba that he is.
And if he doesn't pay, then E. Jean Carroll gets to raid Mar-a-Lago. So it's only fair, right?
This is Donald Trump pledging to allow Russia to invade Europe. Other than Canada and the United States, all of the NATO signatory nations are all European nations. So when Donald Trump talks about encouraging Russia to invade a NATO nation that doesn't pay, you got to pay, he's talking about allowing Russia to invade Europe. So what we can assume out of all of this is that Donald Trump not only will allow Russia to fully annex Ukraine if he becomes president, but then he will encourage Russia to move on to invading Eastern Europe.
While Americans are telling pollsters that they think Biden is too old, Trump is telling Russia to invade the free world. Does that mean anything to anyone?
Bob Cesca. It's the Bob Cesca Show. New episodes every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, everywhere you get your podcasts, and at bobcescashow.com.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2011. That was the day Madison public school teachers held a sick-out in opposition to Governor Scott Walker's anti-labor assaults. Walker had introduced Assembly Bill 11, later known as Act 10. This union-busting bill proposed the elimination of collective bargaining rights for public sector workers regarding health and pension benefits, limited wage increases, eliminated dues collection, and mandated annual union recertification. Immediately, tens of thousands of protesters descended on the state capitol, chanting, "Kill the bill," and took part in hearings to voice their opposition. Area schools remained closed for days as protests continued to grow throughout the spring. While parts of Act 10 have been ruled unconstitutional in the years since, the legislation has nonetheless wreaked havoc. A series in Milwaukee's Journal Sentinel titled Act 10 at 5 examined how public school teachers have fared since the Madison uprising. They found that 75% of school districts are losing teachers, retirements have surged, less are entering the profession, and most job hop to the highest salary offers. The teachers' unions report major losses. MTEA notes that membership is down 30%. WEAC reports that membership and dues collection were cut in half. Seniority rights have evaporated and layoffs are increasingly tied to performance. Annual salary growth has slowed, stopped, or reversed. Teacher morale is low in many districts. Teachers often complain of additional unpaid duties, larger class sizes, and more performance reviews. There are new restrictions on attire as well as speech and political activities. If there is any good news, it is that unions survive annual recertification and remaining members are more active and more engaged in union work.
I watched it on TV.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
You know, like millions of people around the world, I'm literally both not surprised and outraged by the news. Reported death of Alexei Navalny. He bravely stood up to the corruption, the violence, and all the bad things that the Putin government was doing. In response, Putin had him poisoned. He had him arrested. He had him prosecuted for fabricated crimes. He sentenced him to prison. He was held in isolation. Even all that didn't stop him from calling out Putin's lies. Even in prison, he was a powerful voice for the truth, which is kind of amazing when you think about it. And he could have lived safely in exile after the assassination attempt on him in 2020, which nearly killed him, I might add. But he was traveling outside the country at the time. Instead, he returned to Russia. He returned to Russia, knowing he'd likely be imprisoned or even killed if he continued his work. But he did it anyway, because he believed so deeply in his country, in Russia. Reports of his death, if they're true, and I have no reason to believe they're not, Russian authorities are going to tell their own story. But make no mistake, Putin is responsible for Navalny's death. Putin is responsible. What has happened to Navalny is yet more proof of Putin's brutality. No one should be fooled, not in Russia, not at home, not anywhere in the world.
Yeah, I don't think very many people are, except, very, 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 hero-worshipping miscreants out there who just, no, it can't be. It can't be that Tucker Carlson is sucking the behind of a man who would kill a freedom fighter. Or as Donald Trump calls them, suckers and losers. Suckers and losers, everybody. Like, why would he sacrifice his life? Why would he do that? I would have stayed in Germany. I wouldn't have gone back there. I don't go where I'm not wanted. What? Yeah, so, the idea of courage or belief in freedom for others, a willingness to sacrifice your life for a better future for your fellow countrymen is so foreign to these freaks. And at least Donald Trump, still lives in America where he can be ordered to pay up in a fraud trial decision that holds him responsible for at least $355 million worth of fraud. $355 million worth of shrill, shrieking fraud in that company. That man is a complete he's like Russia. They built this is what they do. Okay, they make it look really good for for an outsider to come to Moscow. It looks really nice. It really does. Moscow's beautiful. St. Petersburg's stunning too. Catherine's palace is there, her winter palace, all this stuff. Beautiful, just stunning, very pretty. You leave the Potemkin village, the fake place that's built to make you think it's a prosperous country. And you find out that all their weapons are like from the 40s and the 50s, and they just have a fresh coat of paint on them, and that their buildings are crumbling, and the only thing that's holding them up from the inside are like, a couple of metal struts. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's all a Potemkin village. It's a fake place built just to bamboozle you, just to make you think Russia is doing well. And its people are, eating three squares. It's still the potato thing. You understand? Russia is still a potato place. And, the vodka, you can buy a bottle of vodka there for like $1. You can. But it's the cheap stuff. It is. It's like the tango of screwdrivers. But, yeah, what a farce. And we have American propagandists like Donald Trump, vouching for these people. You have an American propagandist in Tucker Carlson vouching for this person, excusing the behavior of this murderer by saying exactly what Donald Trump said, right? When Donald Trump was asked by, I guess this is where Tucker Carlson learned it, where Bill O'Reilly asked Donald Trump, but how could you support Putin? Because Bill O'Reilly is one of those, papas. He's one of those older guys that remembers the Red Scare, that remembers the evil empire, that remembers, the Cold War, that remembers, NATO was a good thing. It was an alliance that kept Europe free from invasions from guys like him, right? So he asked Trump when Trump was first running for president. He goes, well, how could you suck his toes? Let's just say, when this guy is a killer. And what was What do you think? We're so innocent. We're killers too.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because when Tucker gave that response, when questioned about Russian atrocities, social atrocities, moral atrocities, he said everybody kills. And then he took it a step further. Everybody gets lied to. Everybody repressed.
No, what he said is leaders all kill.
Right.
That's why you want to be a leader. That's how perverse it got. That's how ugly he sank. That's how low he went. That's why you want to be a leader. You want to be a leader so you can kill people. I got this via juries. Sometimes juries kill people too. They will adjudicate the ultimate punishment and take a man's life. It doesn't make them killers, does it? No. It's just like, wow, this extrajudicial killing thing that Duterte and Putin and, Orban and some of the most autocratic psychos in the world carry out simply because they don't like you is fine with him. He can't, Tucker's mind is so shot, or he's willing to go so into the propaganda that he isn't willing to understand that juries actually kill people sometimes too, but it's part of the law, and that Putin randomly kills people and it's not part of the law. You know what I mean? Because there is no law. This is a guy who's insisting that he is all about free speech. Elon does it too. They're all about free speech, but they will actually prop up Putin, who doesn't believe one whit about free speech. Whenever he sees a bunch of people getting together, waving a sign that's counter to him, he has the police come and whisk them away. You saw all this when the Ukraine war first started. Remember when it first started? And Russians were out on the street and they were pro-Ukraine. Do you remember that? And the police were called out and people were just being, taken away. They were just being arrested willy-nilly. They were just, wherever they were and whatever part of Russia that they were, trying to say, no, Ukraine needs to be free, they were just totally whisked away. There were videos about it. You could see it on the street. Tucker Carlson, the free speech guy, he's over there saying, the word is countenancing it, but he's over there saying, well, America doesn't have free speech either. Are you freaking kidding me? You got to recommend to people that they take ivermectin instead of, following guidelines that were put out by virologists, people who study transmissible viruses. You got to tell them that maybe you could put bleach inside the lungs and clean them out. People did that, and one guy drank fish food because one of the ingredients was ivermectin, and he died. His wife, and Tucker didn't lose his job. What? Free speech. So sick, so sick. Well, everybody kills. Everybody kills. I mean, you want to be a leader because you want to kill people.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
This is Stephanie Miller, and here's what you missed.
We've been talking Super Bowl, and
oh, by the way, Stephanie.
Yes.
The Jesus commercials.
Yes.
They're all financed with Hobby Lobby money.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
They're this right wing. Yeah, they don't give any money to actual poor people like Jesus would do.
Yeah, those antiquity smuggling bastards from Hobby Lobby. Thieves of history.
Speaking of Super Bowl ads, you said the Kennedys went DEFCON 1 over that RFK Jr. Super Bowl ad. You said, can we please clear out the peanut gallery now? This is too important an election and too important a time in history for extraneous nonsense from its denizens.
The point is that 8 million people have visited the John F. Kennedy Library since it opened in 1979. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that ad plays on the ad from 1960 plays on a continuous loop. All of a sudden, I'm watching the Super Bowl in 2024, and all of a sudden it's like October of 1960 again.
Thank you for your Eric Bollerting. You said, was some editor at the New York Times drunk? Quote, Mr. Trump, by contrast, does not appear to be suffering the effects of time in such visible ways. Trump often dyes his hair and appears unnaturally tan. He's heavy-set and tall and uses his physicality to project strength in front of crowds. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Thank you, Charlie.
Ooh, As Frank Zappa once said, gooey, dripping, steaming.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was a headline, I thought it was a joke, but about like, is Biden age more of a problem than, I don't know, Putin, what do you call it? Trump giving, NATO to Putin
Zappa,
or whatever.
gooey,
I mean,
something?
it's not a joke, Charlie. That's the problem.
I mean, let's talk to
good,
a
I
few
think he said.
Estonians and see what they think is a bigger problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Joe Biden's age or the fact that Trump is like opening the door to Russian expansionism.
Hear all this and more on the next Stephanie Miller Show.
President Trump will have a miracle second term.
He is the one that God's going to put his hands on.
God says, I'm going to flip this thing, and we haven't seen anything yet, but it's coming.
We're not crazy, they're crazy.
And justice will be served, says your God.
This is far from being over.
Nothing will stop me from my plan of putting my son, Donald Trump, back in that White House.
All of this is culminating in Donald Trump getting his second term of presidency. It has to.
I hear the sound of victory. I hear the sound of victory.
Make America great again.
That's what the Bible says.
That is spiritual warfare.
We'll take it by force.
This is war.
Let me tell you something. You ain't seen an insurrection yet.
Believe me.
Bruce King, former governor of New Mexico, often baffled people with his convoluted use of words, like the time he vetoed a loan shark bill he had previously agreed to sign. But Governor, squealed the lenders' lobbyist, we had your commitment. Unfazed, King said, now, boys, we all know that a commitment is not a promise. In this case, King's linguistic backflip was virtuous, for it killed a bad bill. But now come banking giants themselves, doing a shameful backflip on their widely publicized Scouts Honor promise to do the right thing for humanity on a true life-and-death issue, climate change. It was only 2 years ago that Bank of America, J.P. Morgan Chase, and other Wall Street behemoths loudly proclaimed their conversion to environmental responsibility. In ads, interviews, and speeches, they solemnly vowed they would no longer finance new coal, oil, and other fossil fuel projects.
Don't give up. Don't give up. What's true?
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844.
You warned Vladimir Putin when you were in Geneva of devastating consequences if Navalny died in Russian custody. What consequences should he and Russia face?
That was 3 years ago. In the meantime, they faced a hell of a lot of consequences. They've lost and or had wounded over 350,000 Russian soldiers. They've made them in a position where they've been subjected to great sanctions across the board, and we're contemplating what else could be done. But what we were talking about at the time, there were no actions being taken against Russia. And look, all that's transpired since then.
Can you say whether you're looking at increasing sanctions on Russia right now?
We're looking at a whole number of options. That's all I'll say right now.
Yeah, he sounds like he's out of it, doesn't he? I honestly, I don't know why people, because okay, they're both old, they're both seniors, they're both, okay. Here, I read this. This freaked me out, so I'll share it with you because it's freaky that they have both lived longer than the average male in the United States is expected to live. Like they have both lived longer than the average lifespan of an American male. Okay, creepy, freaky. This, I don't know why we have a political system in these United States that is so offensive, okay? And it is. And nobody wants to change it. God knows we've talked about it. 1,850,597 ways to Sunday. That as long as we have an electoral college system the way that we do, we will always get two candidates, that could win, and the parties and the money are going to pick them. And that is the way it is. That is our country. And, I've wanted to change it for the longest damn time, but nobody wants to amend the Constitution. Nobody's in the mood to do it. Nobody knows how to do it. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to wade through it. 2/3 of the states in this country will never agree to amend the Constitution to end this system that we have. So, knowing that that is the system in which we toil, we're always going to get two people. And out of 350 million plus Americans, we got these two. One is a decent man who outlived the ordinary lifespan of an American male and will be 81 years old on Election Day. The other one could have gone to school with him. Okay, they could have been high school friends, because the other one will be 78 years old on Election Day and isn't a decent or truthful person. He is a scumbag. He's a fraud. He's a liar. He's a cheat. Nothing is below him when it comes to self-aggrandizement or self-preservation. Nothing. He doesn't care who lives or dies. He is Vladimir Putin. He is Viktor Orban without the authority. And he wants it. He wants that authority. He wants the authority to kill. And that's why Tucker Carlson is planting that idea in your head, that leaders all kill. And that is why they want to be leaders, so they can kill. Very sick, very sad bunch of people on the Republican side of things. Very, very strange, very 180, very mind-blowing, mind-numbing even, just very, very, authoritarian and fascist, just to say what it is. And they're going to try. They're going to make, this is it. This is, this election now is the last-ditch effort to take it and turn it into fascism. And if they don't, you know how I feel about it. I feel like if everybody takes this seriously, meaning this election, and shows up and does their tiny little civic duty, the smallest of things. I'm not asking you to be poisoned in Germany and still come and surrender yourself knowing you're going to go to jail in a show trial for nothing. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm not asking for that kind of courage or bravery or any kind of courage or bravery. No. I'm saying do the littlest civic duty, and when the ballot comes to your mailbox, or when the ballot comes for early voting, or when you have to go to the ballot, or when you have to go to a school or a church to cast your ballot, I'm asking that you do it, because if you do it, Trump has no chance. None. And all this madness has a pretty good chance of ending, meaning the Republican Party will see the futility of this platform of theirs of grievance and hatred, polarization, division, doing nothing all the time on any issue that the American people want something done about. Okay, this is the most do nothing Congress I have ever seen, and that's saying a lot because we've seen a lot of them. Mostly when there are Republicans in charge. Mostly when there's, Republicans in charge, they do one thing and one thing only, and that's they pass a tax cut for the upper brackets, for the corporations and the richest Americans. And then for the remainder of their time in Congress, the remainder of their time in the presidency, they do nothing. They do nothing but criticize, point, make you angry, tell you what's wrong, and do absolutely zero to improve it, fix it, even to suggest a solution to the problem. It's just the way they are. It's who they are. It's what they do. Okay? And so the idea that, oh my God, we had an immigration package that was it was only about border security. It didn't even deal with paths to citizenship. It didn't deal with anything for the dreamers. It didn't deal with anything for people who are already here. It didn't deal with people who want to work but can't. It didn't even discuss, okay? It was a strictly border security package. And it got killed because Donald Trump told them to kill it because he wants the issue. And then, well, first they said, if you want your Ukraine money, you're going to have to marry it up to border security. Like pretending that the Ukraine invasion by Vladimir Putin, the invasion of a sovereign nation, the invasion of an unarmed country, the invasion of a democracy in Europe by force, with weapons, with tanks and missiles, by bombing maternity hospitals, by bombing kindergartens, by bombing, theaters that clearly were marked children, by invading and taking over steel plants and making people be held hostage in a steel plant because they couldn't leave, okay? By flooding the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. That was the same as people coming from South America asking for asylum. It was the same. So after they actually convinced some of their lesser-minded, unable to think people that it was the same, they then said, we're not giving you Ukraine border money unless you give us Southern American border money. We said, fine, we'll give you border money. We don't like the situation at the border either. We realize for 30 years we've been trying to do comprehensive immigration reform, and every time we do it, you have a Republican speaker in the House who won't ever introduce the bill. We spent all these months negotiating across the aisle with you, and then you disrespect your own people and us, and you refuse to introduce it so that there could be a vote, and you know that if we did introduce it and vote on it, it would pass. That's them.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. Randi Rhodes. RandiRhodes.com.
Do you think that the people who stormed the Capitol should be held responsible to the full extent of the law?
I have concerns about the treatment of January 6 hostages.
Can I speak to Pelosi? Yeah, we're coming. Oh, my kids, we're coming for you too.
We can take that place.
An example needs to be made.
Start making a list, put all those names down, and we start hunting them down one by one.
They've got the gallows stood outside this Capitol building. It's time to start using them.
There hasn't been a positive thing happen in this administration since it came about.
Now, Teddy Roosevelt had the square deal. FDR had the New Deal. Truman had the fair deal. What President Biden, Democrats, all of us have accomplished in the last few years is a big deal.
Results matter. Inflation now is down to 3.2%. Wages are up to 4.4%. The economy is booming, 5.2% GDP growth in the last quarter.
With a gallon of gas now at the lowest Thanksgiving price since 2020, prices for gasoline down 9 straight weeks.
By so many measures, the economy is in good shape. Unemployment near 50-year lows. Wages going up. The economy, it is growing. Inflation, it is slowing.
Because of the CHIPS and Science Act, one of the most significant economic plans since FDR. I'm proud of the work Biden and Harris have done.
President Biden and his team worked 24/7 with partners in the region to make sure that this release was possible. This is a president who is right now showing the American people what real leadership looks like.
It's amazing how many times in his career Joe Biden has been counted out, only to come back and prove the critics wrong.
I got rid of Roe v. Wade.
Well, should the woman be punished for having an abortion?
There has to be some form of punishment. We will root out the radical left thugs that live like vermin.
You would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Trump wrote on social media, if you go after me, I'm coming after you.
He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one. I am your retribution.
What is a failed coup? Is it a loss? A defeat? A victory for the good guys?
What happens to those who perpetrated the coup? Are there consequences? Or do they remain in power? And if they do, when are we safe? What will stop them next time?
Donald Trump's campaign is obsessed with the past. He's willing to sacrifice our democracy, put himself in power. Not America, not you.
A failed coup with no consequences is just a training exercise for the next attack.
I am your voice. I am your warrior. I am your justice. I am your retribution.
And make no mistake, they're going to try again. Unless you stop them.
Whether you're listening to Leslie Marshall each Tuesday through Friday or Brad Bannon each Monday, you can hear them from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern on the Progressive Voices Network. Here's a sample of what you'll hear.
The director of the United Steelworkers District 4, Dave Wasura. Unions give workers a voice in shaping their communities, and that includes increased civic engagement, more focused political power for working families. It's a win-win-win all around because you have, the wages. Obviously, you're improving the surrounding community because there's job creation. There are wages that are increased, not just at the union, but also the non-union facilities because they raise the bar. But then there's
Fatality. This is the Randi Rhodes Show.
It
to speak
is.
with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
All right, 47 after the hour here, and this is the last segment, and then beer is what it is. We're still on verdict watch. What?
And we're off Monday. Wanted to remind people.
Oh, thank you. Yes, President's Day. I'm getting old. I'm going to take all the fake holidays now. I'm going to take all the faux ones. The President's Day one, MLK. Well, I'm taking them off. All the bank holidays, that's my holiday now. So anyway, what was I going to say?
Sorry about that. I made you lose track. Reminding everybody of that. I can't remember what you were about to say. You were about to take calls, though.
Dave in Washington.
Oh, hi, Randy.
Hi.
Really a long time, and you just crack me up. You always have.
Oh.
I just wanted to let you know that Saturday, the 24th of February, is going to mark the second year of Putin's criminal aggression, and when he started bombing the civilians, everything.
Yeah.
There's going to be mass support for Ukraine shown on that day. And yeah, mega heads will be exploding as a result. For example, Ukraine Association of Florida is going to have a big rally down there in Palm Beach on the Great Lawn. We here in Seattle, I'm with Ukraine's defense support, and we're going to be having a huge parade from downtown to the Space Needle for a big rally. But there's going to be rallies all over the country, and in Canada, from Montreal to Houston, everywhere. There's going to be a huge showing of support for Ukraine, and these will be some of the best and brightest progressive.
Our government is so broken that what we have here is, I couldn't believe this today. I really couldn't. That Navalny's been slowly being poisoned, and then he finally collapsed and died, and that the president of the United States had to, stand up and say to the American people about Ukraine that Congress has left the building. Did you know that?
I know, and it's so sad. It's like coming down to literally you are left or right, against Ukraine or for Ukraine. And it's terrible, and I think
but
that.
How did it become? How did freedom become a left thing minus the right? How did defending democracy against an evil empire become a left thing and not a right thing? I don't understand these people that were totally anti evil empire. Were now all of a sudden they're for Putin to the point where They play games with our national security. We gave them a border bill because they said that the Ukraine issue was a border issue. Okay, and so we said, okay, fine. You want to twist your brain into that? Okay, no problem, because we don't like what's going on at the southern border. It's been broken for a really long time. Let's fix it. And they didn't want it because Donald Trump told them no. So we separated out the Ukraine money, and you know what they did? They went home. They're gone for 2 weeks.
They're gonna see a huge mass support for Ukraine, and they're gonna all be. Well, they don't care, but still.
They don't care. You know what you're talking when you say they? You know what you're talking about? You're talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene. You're talking about one person now. Any one right-wing maniac in Congress can vacate the chair, can move to vacate the chair. Okay? And so Congress doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. Can I say something else? We collect medical supplies and equipment. Of course, we have a donate button, but to fund our purchasing tax.
Who is we?
Tasks. Ukraine Defense Support.
What is
it? We're Ukraine Defense Support. It's one word for website.org. But we're a group of about 400 members based in Seattle. We've got members all over. Like I say, we have good partners there in Florida with the Ukraine Association of Florida. But anyway, like I said, we are doing what we can to support Ukraine, and we're kind of unique because we take donations and money, and we also get medical equipment, what have you, and we take it directly to the front. In other words, we deliver it to Kyiv we deliver like drones and drone parts or what have you, and medical first aid kits and tourniquets and what have you to Kyiv, and from Kyiv the units, specific units come and pick them up and then take them to the front, the actual front, and first aid kits save lives.
Who is able to get into Ukraine and deliver? Who's able to do that?
Well, we have couriers. People going to. I'm going to over in April. I'm going to Krakow.
I want to go with you.
I want to go. I'm going to spend a few days. Oh, well, actually, I've got about 5 days in Krakow. But anyway, I'll be taking two big.
Well, I know you could go to Poland, but can you go to Ukraine? You can get into Ukraine.
Yeah. You have to take a train from there.
Oh, I want to go with you. I want to go.
I can't wait. And I'm also, like I say, I'll have two big suitcases. That's got I don't know, I have everything in it. I'm going to take actually about 1,000 vitamins with me because they really want vitamins. They need everything, bandages. And one thing that's really cool is how first aid kits save lives. And the best first aid kits are called AFACs. The A stands for Air Force first aid kits. For some reason, they are just the best. They have the best tourniquets. Russians have tourniquets that break. Our tourniquets, we give them the best tourniquets we can buy. Anyway, if I know that you probably have some Air Force listeners, and I'm hoping maybe they could give a fact for Ukraine, and if they've got, that's where we've been getting AFACs is from Air Force veterans and some other people on bases, and that's, like I say, one of the ways we help and support Ukraine.
All right. Well, Ukraine. Listen, I'm gonna go because you've got other callers, and the show is just about over. But what is it? UkraineDefenseSupport.org.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Dave. Appreciate the good work.
Bless you, dear. Please keep up the good, funny work.
You keep it up. You're the man.
The website looks great. It says there that they've raised around $250,000.
Brother David in Kansas.
Great. I want to go to Kiev with Dave. Quote, everyone says corruption is everywhere, but for me it seems strange to say that and then not try to put the people guilty of that corruption away. End quote. Rest in peace, rise in power, Alexei. This is a fraught day for me, sister. It started with that $350 million woo in New York, and then this.
We're still on verdict watch, though,
And we are still on verdict watch. That is correct.
What we have here that we're still waiting for is the Supreme Court. They obviously, Jack Smith had made his brief. The Trump people have responded, so that's complete. And the Supreme Court could rule any minute now, any second, anytime they want, about whether or not a president, former, has absolute immunity from prosecution for crimes he commits while he's president. So that's kind of one of the things. And the other one is the Fani Willis disqualification hearing is over. Did you see that they actually, these disgusting human beings on the other side, they call Fani Willis's father?
Unbelievable.
I couldn't believe they called him to the stand today to testify about whether or not he told his daughter that she needs to have cash in the house at all times. And he said, listen, the guy he told great stories. Not that he was supposed to, he was testifying, but he managed to get a story in about how he was offered a fellowship at Harvard.
Yes.
And he was in Cambridge, and he tried to use his American Express card to pay for lunch for him and his kids, and they wouldn't take his American Express card. So he whipped out his Visa, thinking maybe they don't take American Express, right? And they said, no, we don't want your Visa. We don't want a credit card from you. He goes, well, I could write you a check. No, we don't want a check from you. Well, how about traveler's checks? No, we don't want travel. And he had to pay them. The bill was like $9.90-something cents. He had to give them a $10 bill. It's the only thing that they would take from him. And he goes, and I don't mean to say that this is a black thing because I really don't want to be racist. He goes, but it is a black thing, and that's why we always have cash.
Exactly.
Disgusting.
It is beyond disgusting. There are still more of us. This is the election. We are a generation away.
I know, but listen, if Kiev becomes a great Russian city, you will only have ourselves to blame, truly.
Truly.
So, like I said, it's ridiculous. And Biden, just in case you didn't hear it, he was shocked today when he found out that they went on vacation.
It's about time they step up, don't you think? Instead of going on a 2-week vacation. 2 weeks.
Oh, my God.
They're walking away. 2 weeks. What are they thinking? My God, this is bizarre. And it's just reinforcing all the concern and almost, I won't say panic, but real concern about the United States being a reliable ally.
Oh, my God.
This is outrageous.
So to compare these two men is such a disservice to the United States of America, our national security, our position in the world. One of those things, one of those old men is not like the other. Choose wisely. Happy President's Day.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes.
911, what's your emergency?
America's healthcare system is broken, and people are dying.
Welcome to Code WAC, where we shine a light on America's callous healthcare system, how it hurts us, and what we can do about it. I'm your host, Brenda Gazzar. This time on Code WAC. Some states are making it easier for trans and non-binary individuals to get gender-affirming care, which can include medical interventions such as hormone replacement therapy or transition surgery to help them align various aspects of their lives with their gender identity. But a record number of bans were passed last year to outlaw or limit such care. What kind of toll does this take on those in these communities? What policy solutions are needed to ensure they have access to the medical care they need? To find out, we spoke to Ash Orr, a trans organizer from West Virginia and press relations manager for the National Center for Transgender Equality, or NCTE.
There's been a lot of impacts that we have seen here on our youth. We saw in 2023 alone over 500 bills introduced that targeted LGBTQ plus rights, and over 400 of these bills targeted the rights of the trans community, and close to 150 of these bills specifically aimed to restrict or outright access or ban access to life-saving gender-affirming care for youth, which in some cases was as old as 25. We now have 21 states that have passed bans on gender-affirming care, and these bans include substantial financial and professional penalties for the providers that do provide this necessary care to patients.
Get the full Code WAC story on progressivevoices.com and on the PV app. Catch all our episodes by subscribing to Code WAC wherever you find your podcasts. This podcast is powered by Heal California, a nonprofit that uplifts the voices of those fighting for healthcare reform around the country. Until next time, stay healthy.
Now, the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn presents the Green News Report.
We don't know who it belongs to. We have no idea where it came from.
and we also don't know all that it contains.
Mysterious oil spill triggers national emergency in Trinidad and Tobago.
Climate experts are sounding the alarm over a troubling new report